Доброго дня. І поки учасники, яких ви бачите в списку,
To take their seats, I will give a quick intro. This place, Mezhigiria, is no stranger to alternative facts. Its resident denied for many, many years, former resident, the fugitive president of Ukraine, denied for many years that he owned this place. And it wasn't until Yanukovych Leaks project that Anya has already talked about that it was discovered that he actually did own the place through a clever scheme, as well as the cost of this place. We estimated it at the time to be about $1 billion. $1 billion went into building this place. Since Yanukovych ran away about 4 years ago, there's been basically an epidemic of alternative facts, and actually conferences about alternative facts as well. But we're still going to talk about it because it's spread across the world, so it's important. I'm going to start by asking all of our panelists to say a few words about how this whole concept, the post-truth and alternative facts, actually affects your daily work. So who would like to take a shot?
Nobody?
Emma, come on.
All right, you can speak. Oh, okay. Really excited to be here. I just got off a plane, so hopefully what I say makes sense. If it doesn't, I think there's time for questions. So, you know, I think in the U.S. we are in some ways playing catch up to a lot of these concepts. Alternative fact, I think the first time I heard that was this January. From a senior advisor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, and she said this about inauguration size. And in a certain sense, especially for us, and I work at CNN and we're in the visual news business as well, that one was easy to refute. Pictures really told that story. But I think it's something that anybody who's in the truth-telling business is dealing with.
Scott, well, how about you? How does it affect your work?
Well, first I want to say thank you for having us here. It's a real honor to be in the company of you guys. I think that we have it easy in the U.S. Compared to what you guys have to confront on a daily basis here. This is a very tough environment to work in, and I have a lot of respect and admiration for you all. So thanks for having us. It's a real honor. I think it's true that this alternative fact is kind of new in the United States, but in some ways we've been dealing with lying politicians and lying corporations and other officials for many, many years. The proliferation of fake news sites, of conspiracy theories on the internet is a challenge. But at the Washington Post and in a lot of other news organizations, CNN, the New York Times, other places in the United States, and I'm sure across Europe, we're all trying to keep our heads down, to work very, very hard to make sure that our information is accurate, that our sources are properly vetted, that the documents that we receive are authentic, and that we do everything in our power to make sure that the stories we tell are 100% accurate. You know, Donald Trump likes to say that the mainstream media is fake news. And all the reporting that the Washington Post has done on Donald Trump, he's never asked the Washington Post to correct one fact. He did ask us to correct one fact. After the FBI director was fired by Donald Trump, his spokesman, Sean Spicer, held a press conference outside of the White House near some bushes, and he didn't want the TV cameras to be turned on. And the Washington Post reported that he held a news conference in the bushes outside the White House. And the Trump administration called the Washington Post and said, that's not true. It wasn't in the bushes. It was among the bushes. And that's the only thing that we've had to correct since we began our reporting on Donald Trump.
Hello. I'm speaking too loud, sorry. Hello, thank you for invitation. My name is Ondrej Kundra. I am a reporter from Respect magazine, which was established by the group of dissidents around the circle of Václav Havel. And I would say I'm from the Czech Republic, and I would say that I'm standing somewhere in between you and you. I was feeling rather happy when I heard from the advisor of your president that she used the term alternative facts, because at that time I was thinking, come on, until now you are part of our world as well, because we in the Central Europe are living in this atmosphere for, as you know, many years. We had the communism regime for more than 40 years, and that was the way of living. We were living in a negative utopia, which was based on lies, I would say alternative facts maybe. But if I use the term or the way how Theresa May is speaking, I would say lies mean lies and alternative facts mean just lies. There is nothing like alternative facts. And you can see it now all over the world. More and more politicians from the liberal democracies use this way of communication. You know it already from your era when you have here Russian soldiers. Putin just said it's not soldiers, they are just travelers. When they have cup in Turkey, Turkish government said, it was paid and run by CIA. That's something what had also happened in my country when they were protests against the President Zeman, who is very much pro-Kremlin, maybe the most pro-Kremlin president within the European Union. So they were protests against him, and people show him red cards to say him, we don't agree with your pro-Russian policy. And also his staff was saying those protests were paid by the US embassy in Prague. Of course, it was false. So I would suggest not talking about alternative facts as about alternative facts, but as about lies.
Okay, we'll move on to discuss the nature of alternative facts later on. I think it's very interesting. So Paul, how does it affect your work?
Well, yeah, so I'm Paul Radu. I'm with the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. And what we do, obviously, is we investigate organized crime and corruption. And this has a lot to do with alternative facts, lies, fake news, however you want to call it. Now, I'm doing my own investigative reporting for a long time now, for about 15 years, looking into criminal groups all over the world. And what I noticed was that after the 2000s, lots of the groups that were involved in crime, in drug trafficking and all sorts of other crimes, financial crimes and all this, were operating together with politicians, and they started buying media more and more. In our region, for instance, after the 2000s, there was a focus of these, criminals and the politicians together to buy media, TV, radio, online, print, everything. So we looked into this quite a bit because this was affecting a lot our trade, our business. Because suddenly you had TV stations that were spitting out, what you call now lies or fake news. The difference was in those years, so about 17 years ago, was that the attacks were targeted. So they were generating fake news and lies about certain persons. Sometimes these were business opponents. Sometimes were judges that were investigating these oligarchs, that were owning media. So we've seen this increasingly, and we decided to actually design a few media ownership projects. So for the past about 8 years, we are working on this project. We published, a few projects, and we looked at media ownership all across Eastern Europe, including Ukraine. We worked with our colleagues from here. with Vlad Lavrov, with Anna Babinets, with everybody. And you see how oligarchs are increasingly taking over mainstream media. At the same time, you see this mushrooming of Center for Investigative Reporting, which are independent. You see TV stations, and especially here in Ukraine, there's a lot of counter fake news and counter lies. You see Slitsvo, you see Hromadske, you see many, many others, Kyiv Post and all. But then there is another front that opened about 4 years ago, and that is the internet front. Because we also looked at who owns the internet, the ISP, the internet service providers all over the region. And you see the same fight that took place in the mainstream media about 15 years ago, taking now place in the internet. I mean, you see people that want to control the ISPs. And ISPs are very, very important because internet platforms became more and more publishers. And we have a few that are very influential all over the world. So this is something that I'd like to focus in my talk later on, a little bit, how to follow the money and how to find out what is the infrastructure that allows these lies to go on.
Thank you, Paul. Peter, you were a pioneer writing about alternative facts and post-truth society. I'm sorry you're here again talking about it at another conference, but do give us your wisdom about what you think about how it affects the world and your work in particular.
Я буду по-русски. Я не могу быть в городе там, где я родился.
Speak Russian. I cannot be in the city where I was born and speak English. I'm ashamed that I do not speak Ukrainian, but I grew up abroad and I didn't have chance to learn Ukrainian. Maybe I will have. There's a translation from Russian into English for international guests, right? Frankly speaking, Katya, thank you for nice words, but I would like to tell you this story, not my own story. I would like to tell you a story of a journalist who I met a couple of weeks ago, and that was in a very nice and safe city somewhere in Scandinavia. I cannot say where it was, I cannot tell what country it was, what name it is, because that threatens him. And we were together at the conference on post-truth, and he started telling his story. He's from a country where, just like in Ukraine, they have semi-finished democracy. The Ukraine of Yanukovych times, maybe Turkey, maybe Philippines, maybe Mexico. And he's a young man looking like hipster with earrings, with these fashionable things, the trousers, which are in fashion among young people. And he started telling, he's a journalist, he's an investigative reporter, and he found documents which proved the corruption of the president, not the theory, not the leak, but the documents. And he submitted the documents, and the government said that's fake news, and they say that's the document, it's not our guess, it's the document. They say that's fake news, that's fake news. I don't know. That's happening all over the world. You find facts and they tell you, you invented it. And he was working with this paper, with this document. They filed the case against him in the court, and he came to the court with this paper, and they were saying he's fake news and everything's fake news. He was given 30 years of sentence and then was reduced to 7 years. And I thought he left the country. And they say, where do you live now? He says, I live in the same country. And what about the court? Well, in 3 weeks there will be a court proceeding. And what? And he says, I agree. They will put me to prison for 5 years. And what about your mother? And the mother says that I should leave, but I cannot, I have to stay. And I started telling him, leave. That's the country where prisons are very strict. And they have reputation that they torture people there, beat people there, and he's there, he says, I have to do that. And I think why he has to do it. He's not a heroic type of a person, he's not a dissident type of a person, he has to do it. And I thought that when you're fighting with this fake, where everything's fake, where there's nothing real, where you are standing with the fact and they say that this doesn't exist, you can go crazy. And he makes an address to show that there is the truth, because to go to this prison, it will not be a fake. And the reality starts from there. And only this way I can explain his crazy, ingenious, and very dangerous action to do something real in the world where everything is put to doubt. I was shocked by that. I'm still not recovered. Thank you.
It's easier for you. You don't have to listen to translation. So why is there such a proliferation of this phenomenon right now? Some of you have already touched upon this, and some of you are saying that basically internet providers or owners of the internet may be a part of the deal. Ownership of the media is another problem. We in Ukraine would agree with that statement, because a lot of the time, we have come across this problem many times before. In Ukraine, we have an oligopoly, basically, in media ownership. Certainly, we are not strangers to alternative facts and post-truth. When TV channels and media holdings churn out stories that are basically covered in favor of the owners or in favor of the political interests of the owners. But why is this phenomenon so widespread now? Why is it like a global phenomenon that makes Peter talk about it at conferences in Scandinavian countries every week? Anyone, please take.
I think one of the biggest problems is the use of social media, the rise of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. There are all these sites that pretend that they're not content providers, that they're just social media platforms, but they really have become publishers. They're the newspapers of the 21st century, and they don't want to put the effort into monitoring and editing content. They just let people post stuff, regardless of whether it's true or not. I have a young son who constantly shares things on Facebook, whether it's true or not, and I have to stop him and say, think about what you're sharing, because what you're sharing may not be accurate and it may not be true, and these things catch on like wildfire. There was a story in Washington, D.C. that we called Pizzagate, and I'm not sure if any of you heard about this, but the Russian hacking of the Democratic National Committee got the emails of John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager. And a number of people thought that they saw signs in these emails that John Podesta was running a child pornography and pedophile ring out of a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. And it was based upon really nothing, except for the name of the place was called Comet Pizza, and they used the initials C and P to mean child pornography. And it started off as like a bizarre hoax, and it turned into this thing on the internet that became true for so many people who hated Hillary Clinton. And they hated her so much that they actually believed that she was running a child pornography ring out of the basement of a pizza parlor in Northwest Washington, D.C. And it got so bad that a guy showed up with an AK-47 and walked into the pizza parlor and started firing the weapon because he wanted to self-investigate this child pornography ring. And so I think part of the responsibility lies with Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, some of these places that are allowing these fake news stories to catch on like wildfire and to become true to a lot of people.
Okay. I remember, I'm writing read a lot of articles about the Russian influence in my country and partly about the disinformation campaign. And I remember that my wife once came and she told me, well, I read some interesting article about Russian influence. I will send it to you. I I read it on Facebook, and she sent it to me, and when I start to reading the article, the sentences reminds me my sentences and my thinking, and then I recognize that it's just my article, which was put into the Facebook, and my wife didn't read it in my newspaper. She found it on the Facebook and recommended me to learn something from myself. So that's the way how a lot of people are consuming media nowadays. And if you look into my country, where I know the landscape more in detail, for the politicians, it's much more easier to lie because most of the daily newspapers start to be owned by oligarchs. The reaction of some of my colleagues, journalists from those media, was leaving those media. They decided to do smaller, mostly website projects. They don't have enough money, of course, for that. So they are in the tricky situation. Everybody wants to have the information as a first, to have most readers. So when some is spreading some lies, most of the journalists don't control it that much, and it can spread into the media landscape very fastly. And I think that especially in the Central Europe, at the same time, we forget that there is rather a lot of people who are feeling frustrated after what had happened after the changing regime. The frustration is from the corruption, the frustration is from the behaving of the politicians. Those people are not believing in media in which I'm working. And at the same time, there is a lot of projects which are telling them, read us, we are against the elite, we are against the regime you hate. If you look into the landscape of Czech Republic, we have got between 15 or 20, depends how you count it, pro-Russian anonymous websites at the moment. Most of them are very active, and they spread those disinformation. And for the 25% of the population, those websites are the first source from they take the information. Depends how you look on it. It's pretty high number. On the other hand, there is still 75% of population who are consuming the information from media which I'm working. So depends on us how we will be able to work with this landscape.
Okay, thank you, Paul. What about the owners of the internet? How do they help spread lies or alternative facts?
You know, I mean, so I'm based right now mostly in Argentina and Colombia, you know, and I'm looking there, and I'm an avid reader of comments, you know, on blogs, very obscure blogs and conspiracy theory blogs, and RT. I read RT every day, especially the comments, and many of such things. And you know, in South America, the problems are a bit different than here, but also equal. You know, there are lots of corruption scandals and all, but there's less Russian influence, let's say. Still, you know, there's so much what you call fake news and whatever. And I was looking into this a little bit, and what you see across countries in South America, but also in Eastern Europe, is that the level of literacy of people increased. So I think this is also an expression of literacy. People can express themselves right now. And they express themselves without a knowledge base. So part of the fertile ground of fake news is you know, the growing literacy, which is a good thing. And I think this is a step that you can't avoid in people becoming, you know, a bit more schooled, a bit more knowledgeable and stuff. So, and of course, there's the platforms that allow them to express themselves, and they feel the urge to express themselves. So you see all these crazy theories, and not all these people are bad people, you know, that are influenced by the Russian government. Some of these are just influenced by their lack of knowledge. So I think that plays an important factor, and that is something that state actors use when they are going for their outright type of, you know, fake news, and, you know, trying to send a message out, you know, and try to undermine democracies. So I think that's something that we need to take into account as well.
Да. Как ни странно, Катя, мы обсуждали именно это.
It may sound strange, Katya, but yesterday's night we had been discussing the same issue by 3:30 a.m. And I would like to remind participants of the discussion the major conclusion which we reached. Facts, facts, facts. People hate facts. Facts remind you strongly that you will definitely die, that in my age, irrespectively how much I go for fitness activity, I become less fit with every coming day, and that who wishes to confirm for him herself that terrible facts. Sometimes you need facts, but sometimes you do not need facts when you try to build up something or to develop something. For example, if you're doing something real, like building up a bridge, you need real facts. If this is not, of course, the Kerch Bridge. I think that's not just the problem of technical nature. This is the problem of political philosophy or political goal or social goal, better to say. The Soviet Union was a terrible thing, but it had a pseudo goal. They strived to build up the communist paradise, and they had to pretend that they said truth. Of course, they lied about the economic growth, and it was very easy for the West to discover that it was alternative fact. But when a society does not have any goal, it does not strive for the future, there is no need to create any picture about reality. And in this case, there is a seduction to play with the false facts, to present alternative reality and be happy with it. That's a real joy when you overcome facts, when you and look at those dwarfs like Putin. The post-factual politicians, they all play like actors and based on nostalgia.
Мне кажется, здесь реально вопрос.
That's a real issue of lost objectives, lost goal. Look at Eastern Europe. The Eastern Europe has very simple goal to join the European Union, and in course of reaching this goal, they had more or less the national discourse, and when they managed to get access to it, then appeared some people like Gorchinskaya, other, so to say, thinkers who suggested alternative vision, and that is, if when you have a goal, then you need the facts to based on which to reach this goal.
Towards where I wanted it to go into the philosophy of alternative facts. What are they? Ondrej has already said that they're basic lies, but Peter is saying a different thing, that alternative facts is something that gives people good emotions. They're not even facts, it's just they're called by that name. They're not facts, that's something that makes you feel good. They're like ice cream, they're like alcohol, stuff that we use to stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning. And the absence of purpose contributes to that. So I would like you all to reflect some more about the nature of what alternative facts are. And I think that it will give us a little bit of an answer why there is so many of them, and then we'll move into what we as journalists have to do about them. So who would like to?
I'll go. Okay, That's deep. Well, I think you know, during the U.S. election, media organizations, ours included, yours included, we do fact-checking, right? A candidate says a thing, we look into it. Is it true? Is it false? People can share it. Sometimes politicians share it. My opponent lied. See, the media says my opponent lied. But I think, if I'm understanding the point, the sort of deeper point, I think sometimes what a fact absent a story can miss for people is what is the connection to my life. So this politician lied. Why do I care? So they said that unemployment is 5% and it's really 10. You know, I haven't gotten a raise in 5 years, so like none of this really matters to me anyway. And so in the US, we've sort of gone back to some of the classics recently. 1984 is a top seller these days.
We never left.
And also Hannah Arendt, a brilliant political philosopher. And she actually had this theory that totalitarianism and terrorism breed in a society when individuals in that society are lonely. And this is actually, I think, a really interesting point for all of us to consider is like, how is, yes, seeking the truth is the core of what we do, but how is our work connecting and being useful to people, I mean, in the US, we talk about consumers because we're a market-based media model, but like, that connection is important, and I don't think we should ever neglect it.
So on the definition of alternative facts, I guess, Kellyanne Conway backtracked on this in the days afterwards and said, well, I didn't really mean alternative facts. I meant additional information or more information and trying to complete a bigger picture. But the label stuck, and I think everybody thought that what she meant, she really does mean and continues to mean. And the Trump administration does believe in the fact that there are alternative facts. And it's their truth versus your truth. And they would argue that it's not a lie, it's just how I see the truth as opposed to how you see the truth. And there's something to be said about that. But a lie is something that is willful, that has purpose, that has intent. And that's a little bit different than something that's not quite accurate or not quite true.
But don't alternative facts also have an intent? They intend to mislead the public. If they are used consciously, not in the sense that that Peter mentioned as a part of releasing, or Paul mentioned as a part of releasing your thoughts into the wild, into the Facebook or something, without the knowledge base.
Yeah, and some of it may be reckless, and some of it may be intentional to mislead, some of it may just be a mistake. I mean, I think in the press, it's important to understand the difference between these things. And, you know, there are a lot of times when somebody will misstate a fact. We've all done it. Is that a lie? Not necessarily. I think it's really important to understand when somebody is lying and to expose that person for the lie. But I guess the larger point is there's a vast majority of people who will believe what they already believe, no matter what you tell them. You can't change their minds, and we've seen this in the United States. Donald Trump said that he could stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and people would still vote for him. And I think that that's true. There are a lot of people who will vote for him no matter what he says, no matter what anybody else says. He, I believe, has lied countless times. The fake news is really coming out of the White House, not out of the press so much these days. But it doesn't matter to a vast majority, not a vast majority, but probably like 30 to 40% of the American public. The good news is there's 60 to 70% of the American public that wants fact-based news. And they really are hungry for journalism that is deeply reported, that is factual, And we at the Washington Post and at CNN have seen our readership just go through the roof because people are turning to us for real information rather than half-truths, false news, etc. We've doubled the size of our investigative staff. CNN has doubled the size of its investigative staff. And I think there's a real opportunity for all of us to work really hard at making sure that the stories that we're telling are true, that they're accurate, and that we kind of spread, the gospel, around the world. That what we do really matters, and it's never mattered more than right now.
If I might just continue on that, you just mentioned the gospel, right? But just think about it, how many versions of the Bible are out there? Oh. How many alternative Bibles are there? So, in a way, if you think about it, what these people, and what these robots sometimes, AIs that generate fake news they are very bad fiction writers. We all love fiction, right? Fiction has been part of writing for, since the beginning of history, and we love it. Except that what's going on right now, this is more than fiction. This is a power struggle. So people like Trump, people like Dugin here in our region, and many others, what they're trying to do is to suck us into their own reality. They want to define this reality. And the truth doesn't matter, because what matters in their head is the gold. They want to save us. They really have good intentions, lots of the times. Now, of course, those good intentions are backed by lots of money. They are making lots of money in the process. You look all over the place in Eastern Europe, and not only, and you see, oligarchs benefiting from this, you see journalists, corrupt journalists, you see lots of people making, this is an industry, and this is something that we need to understand. And then you see priests that are behind fake news as well, and they are, talking about the gospel, but it's always their gospel, because the ultimate goal is some good that you don't even know about. So this is what they're counting on, and of course they're counting on our love for this badly written fiction.
What's interesting, it just struck me that all of you are sort of talking around this phenomenon of post-truth and alternative facts as alternative to facts. In a way that people are tired of facts and want something else. They don't care about facts. Maybe it's like what Peter said, facts are too terrible, we're all gonna die. So people instead want to be saved, like Paul said, or want emotions instead. So maybe this compensatory nature of facts is also a factor in its proliferation and why it's become so common. Peter, what do you think?
Let's go back to this combination of alternative facts and the big emotional content, but also what other people are talking about, the authorities, what works for the authorities. If we are looking for how to combat that, we need to give some context. Let's take the problem of conspiracy, the theory of conspiracy, conspirology, which is used widely by Erdogan, by Putin, many others. Why are they using this theory of conspiracy? What it gives them? They don't have ideology practically. They don't have serious ideology. They have the discourse of the theory of conspiracy. And alternative facts, they feed the conspirology. Conspirology is quite a tricky thing. On the one hand, it's pleasant, because if the world isn't conspiracy, then it's not you to be blamed that you're not successful, that your wife left you, that you're drinking a lot. It's because of some conspiracy. That's pleasant. At the same time, and why it is so important for authorities, if you live in the world where everything's conspiracy, you can change nothing, because you will never change. if there's somewhere the hand of Rothschild or Rockefeller, and you become passive. You don't want to go to meetings, you don't want to change anything, because you live in the world where the authorities are hidden secret. And for authorities, it's good. Whatever you do, it's a conspiracy. You don't need to fight with facts. You need to fight with psychology, with passiveness. You need to create the feeling that you can achieve something, and a more active position to fight the theory of conspiracy and alternative facts. You don't need to think about conspiracy and alternative facts. You need to work with psychology, which feeds the conspiracy. And as a journalist, you change your mind, you start writing differently, you ask questions differently. I believe very often alternative facts, that's not the main problem. It's a symptom, it's not a reason, but we need to work with reasons, with causes, with the lack of a common goal, with the passive psychology, learned helplessness. That's a wonderful phrase, how to fight that. And when this is defeated, then there will be more facts in your discourse. It leads us to a paradox. To win over alternative facts, for that you don't need facts but imagination. Imagination is the main weapon against alternative facts. This makes our work, the work of journalists, something which no one needs. No. It's about discourse, who generates this discourse, who gives people the templates of thinking how to understand the world. It's on the contrary, it gives the new impulse to the journalism. It inspires it and makes it something needed. We're not just the sellers of information. And some people say, information marketplace. We supply information to this information marketplace. We generate the discourse which makes people stronger. It's more interesting than to supply information. That's also important.
Journalists here, do you agree with Peter that we need to go into the domain of fighting with the absence of purpose, the absence of goal in the society, and fighting passive psychology, as opposed to perform function number one for journalists, which is to inform people? And that kind of takes us back to the 5 W's, to the facts. It's very interesting to hear.
Just shortly, yeah, I don't agree with this at all, because I think the moment we ride the same wave, we just increase the wave. So we become part of fake news, and we become influencers in a way that we don't want to become. So I think, we could do a little bit, of good in the world by feeding the world with more, real news, with facts. Of course, context and telling the story, these are a different thing. I'm all for telling a good story based on facts, of course, but not riding the same wave like these guys, because that won't lead us anywhere, and it will just contribute to the problem. And I think this is exactly what these people want. If you look at the media companies that are owned by people that are behind fake news, they always say the other media outlets are run the same way. They also find their alternative reality, so don't mind them. They are not, looking for the truth. They are the same as us. And this is something that I find very damaging when you're an investigative reporter. I was confronted many times, so I would go to talk to a criminal who would be a subject in my story. And the criminal was previously interviewed by corrupt journalists that work for media outlets that were putting out all sorts of fake news. And the moment the criminal would see me, would ask me right away, how much do you want not to publish? How can I determine you not to publish this? Because he was used as other investigative reporters, corrupt investigative reporters, reacting that way. Now, when these criminals started owning media, they sent out the reporters to behave the same. So these reporters were sent out to get bribes. They were sent out to do harm. So this is really damaging. It's what happened in a sense with embedded journalism, in Iraq and all that. That damaged this business a lot as well. So I think riding the wave is going to do a lot more harm than right now.
That's not at all what I was intimating, and that's not what I meant or said at all. So I agree with you. That's really not what I meant, and if it came across that way, I'm sorry.
Emma, I would like you to speak a little bit about what you wrote to me in an email when we discussed this panel about emotions being a part of a story. Because, facts are important for a journalist, but what Peter is saying is that alternative facts or post-truth society gives a very different reason for people to engage with them. And that reason is in the emotional domain, not the intellectual domain. So how do we as journalists use fact-based reporting to fight that or counter that, but in an effective way? And
so I think one of the things that I've thought a lot about is, I think you said learned helplessness, right? So I think part of what's happening right now in our world is that people have more information than ever before, and I think sometimes people really just feel like, just tell me what's going on, and tell me what's going on in a way that ideally jives with what I already think is true. And that's where I think, a lot of these, in the US it's Breitbart is sort of the big one, this sort of alternative reality kind of publication that really, they see everything through the lens of immigration being terrible and Western civilization being under attack, and they may do actual news stories, but every single news story that they tell is through that same lens. They are looking for those facts. And I think in a world where people are being asked, where voters, especially in a democracy, are being asked to contend with these enormously complicated questions and problems, like how do you combat terrorism? How do we build economies when we're also building robots so that people can still have jobs and people can still, these are enormously important and challenging questions. And so I was having dinner with one of my neighbors one night. He's a military vet, and he was complaining about some bill that Congress was voting on. And he was all mad. I don't even know what's in it, and I'm so mad, And I was like, you can find the entire bill online, it's not true that the information isn't there. The information is there, but it's overwhelming for people who are not in the business of understanding this stuff to figure it out. And so I think for people who are in the work of truth-telling and finding, good, journalistically sound stories, I think you can never discount what the emotional connection is going to be with your audience. And the classic example is, you always have to have a character. You never want to tell a story that's just like, there's corruption. Okay, who's your character? Who are people going to either love or hate or sort of identify with? That has to be a factor, always.
So you need to add emotion to your story, but still base it on facts. That's the essence.
We're emotional creatures. Each one of us is emotional and intellectual.
Ondrej.
And at the same time, I feel that sometimes we as a journalist have problems with emotion because it's not a good way how to persuade the public to believe us. I remember I was in the United States this year in January for 1 month, and I was traveling around the US, visiting different states from east side to west side. When I was watching the television, doesn't matter, CNN, NBS, CBC, whatever, 24 hours, it was full of Trump, and most of the stories, or a lot of the stories, were just emotional stories. There wasn't many facts in those stories. It was just criticism of Trump and a lot of emotion, as I'm saying. And I believe that we need, as a journalist, to work a little bit differently. I'm not sure it's necessary to have a 24 hours Trump in television. I believe that we need to give more money to investigative journalism, and, for example, to find if his properties and business with houses was connected somehow with the Russians or not. And if we find those facts, then it's good to have a reportage about it in television for many hours. It gives me sense, but I'm not sure that we can persuade our readers or our watchers by the emotions. I agree, we as a journalist must be more active in the way how we deliver to the public our stories. I think that we don't do enough in this way. We are rather passive comparing to those all alternative webs. But this activism I'm talking about, it has nothing to do with the emotions, because facts are more important. That's what I believe, and I think that the words are also important. That's why I said at the beginning of our talking that I think that the lies are lies, alternative facts are lies. We are here to talk about the post-truth society. Everybody is talking about this. Everybody believes that it looks like that most of the people don't believe that the true society can exist. So I would suggest not to talk only about the post-truth society, but pro-truth society, because I think that there is a lot of defenders of true society.
A pro-truth society, does it exist on Earth?
It's my term.
Okay. One of the popular narratives about fighting alternative facts and post-truth is let's give people media literacy. Let's train them to differentiate between facts and non-factual, whatever, posts on Facebook. Do you think it's going to work, and how? Because I am yet to be convinced that media literacy is a real thing. I think that critical thinking skills are a very different story, and a lot of educational systems in the world actually do not teach that much critical thinking, specifically with application to your life. You know, they don't actually explain to you why it's important to read the small print in the agreement, or why it's important to read the ingredients on your food, and so on and so forth. And that's a part of critical thinking. The same with media consumption. But I'm looking forward to hearing your opinion. Does media literacy actually work? Can it work? Or if not, what are the alternatives?
Well, one thing I think that's important is that, you know, we assume that facts are out there, and then that you have a shower of lies that comes and covers the facts. But in reality, the facts are not there. There are very, very few facts that are out there, you know. So we need first to get to the facts, and that's the hard part, you know. When we're talking about journalism and investigative journalism, the focus is facts, and we don't have the facts right now. So I don't believe that everybody can be an investigative reporter, but I do believe that every human on earth can be a researcher. So what we're doing right now, for instance, at OCCRP, is we're developing systems to help people, you know, do research. Because I'm very proud of our work, and I'm very proud of the work of our Ukrainian colleagues and everybody. But in real terms, the impact of our investigative reporting, of all the investigative reporting combined in the world, is very, very small. Because we don't understand what's going on around us, and because there's so much corruption, so much whatever, fake whatever, you know. And we're against money, against people who have lots of money, lots of resources, and all that. So it's only going to be the point in time when we solve this, when we'll have more research into what corruption is, what fake news is, what generators of fake news are, that will be able to counter this type of things, and that's only through evidence, through facts. Now, what we're developing at the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project is a system that I called CPR, is Crime Pattern Reporting. This is, for instance, it's a very simple idea. You have a proven case of corruption in a place like Kyiv, let's say. Let's say the mayor of Kyiv, and this is completely fictional, it's fake news, okay? The mayor of Kyiv, who organized an auction a bid, to rebuild the highways around the city, and awarded a local company that is owned by a Belize-based company that has these two proxies involved, and this was uncovered by your colleagues at Slitsford, let's say. It's on TV, and you know that this is a corruption case. Now, what we're trying to do with CPR is to take all this reported corruption from indictments, from legal papers, from all sorts of sources, and turn this into code, turn this into search strings. Because, a search string in this case that I just mentioned would look like if bid out at this date, and if bid won by this company, by local company, and if local company owned by company in Belize, and if company in Belize established 2 days prior to the bid, and so on and so on. And then you take this algorithm and you apply this on data sets that are similar, but in Kharkiv, and in Lvov, and in other places, to find similar instances of corruption. Now, imagine the power of that. Because our problem right now is we don't have facts. We don't have facts because as journalists we rely a lot on sources, human sources with human interests. We rely on leaks with interest behind them, and so on and so on. Now imagine a world where you can get like your homework in the morning as a journalist, or as any human. The challenge of the day. Can you solve these 3 items today? Smaller items, smaller, and this can be generated by the machines. So it's got to be human-machine interaction, but it's not going to be led by the machine, by the artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence, it will allow you to identify possible cases of corruption that you can pursue then as a human in order to eliminate false positives, and it's actually a very long talk about it. But I think that's what's missing. I think we need to understand that we don't have the facts yet, and the moment we'll be able to generate more facts, and that's only through engagement. We need more brains, in the world, I'd say maybe there are 5,000 investigative reporters with brains, That's not enough. That's not nearly enough, because trust me, the corrupt people, the people that generate a lot of this illegal money, there are many more than we are. And it's a fight that is not equal at all. It's an uneven fight, and that's something that we can solve by engaging people via machines, via computers, via other means.
That's very interesting. This is the first time I've heard of coding as an alternative to media literacy, and also networking solutions of people, bringing people with brains together as alternative to media literacy. Any other thoughts?
If let's take an example of China. In China, there was an investigation of the university when a Chinese government is using censorship in Twitter. It doesn't hamper when people dig out some scandals with corruption of local civil servant. Then they know what people think. They can use it against this civil servant. And that means that they're not afraid of the truth so much. They're not so much afraid of the truth. They start being engaged into censorship, is their word, censorship, when people start getting organized, when there are organized protests, groups, and this could be even pro-authorities groups, but once they organize themselves outside of the structure of authorities, then they close their accounts. It's not Twitter, they have their own Twitter thing. What are they afraid of? They are really afraid of when people start creating their own public space, and they're trying to crash the confidence. Alternative facts, they just break your confidence. people cannot come to common terms, and then we don't have a common space where democracy could be burned. And media literacy will not help in that. That's part of our education. It's important to have it in school, but this will not address the problem of how to create a common space. But it's the most important thing is confidence, trust. The confidence is created when people are doing something together, when they need each other. And for the journalists to be needed by people, for that they need to do something that people really need. The most successful article on New Yorker was about the scandal with water. The main thing is not media skill, literacy, but it's important to write about what's important for the reader, viewer. I was in Iowa recently, in the middle of the US. I turn on the TV, understand where Trump is from. That's the news. Again, it's about New York, about some other places, but they don't even report on what's happening in their own state. There's a big gap between media and people. Then Trump comes into the middle and gets all the people there. Iraq's in Ukraine, that's a very great project, but it's important to understand the viewer or reader. Or reader. Yes, a reader, the audience.
So the solutions that are suggested here are code, networking for journalists, and using the brains for networking solutions to uncover facts, organized groups that have trust among each other, and training to create trust, and most important thing, focus on the audience interests. That has a lot of implications for journalists. Ondrej.
I just wonder how many investigative journalists are without brains. I'm thinking all the time, and where I am exactly standing in this field. But anyway, I like the idea which they made in New York Times. They just announced it last week, I guess. They told in the time when everybody is checking our facts and news and articles, when everybody is on Facebook, we just decide to fire some of our editors, because you as the readers, you are our editors. When we do some mistake in our newspaper, you as our readers will tell us very soon, you will put it on Facebook, and we will invest the money to ask more journalists to work for us, for example, as an investigative journalist. So the decision was fired some editors of New York Times, and from the same budget of money, pay investigative journalists to find good facts, good information. That's perhaps the other thing we can think about how to make the journalism today.
Okay, and well, Peter, while you're talking...
I'm so much concerned that my colleague didn't understand me. I would like to explain what I meant by the context, by imagination, by psychology. OCCRP, a great organization, they helped with the Panama Leaks when they found out about offshore money of different international politicians. Among them was the Prime Minister of Iceland, who had to resign because in that society there are some values and the idea of what the Prime Minister should be doing and some idea where the society should be moving. And the same information about Putin, there was no reaction from Russians. Well, good, great guy, he got some money, and Putin used it because there's an information war against me, against you. We had the same in our country. Navalny is doing the same. They're talking about the theory of conspiracy, and everyone's getting inspired. Why? There's corruption there and here, and again, the journalist investigation, it doesn't do in Russia. Navalny does it. Hundreds of people go, hundreds of thousands go out into the streets. When Navalny is doing it, it's wow, it's the society where there's the fear from from the past, from the 30s, and when the person comes out, that was important, that inspired people, that was brave act, and people were involved into his projects. But you feel that you are part of something, and you see here and there is the investigation of corruption, but it works only when there is a correct understanding of psychological problems of the society and when there is a goal.
Hire Navalny.
I actually have an answer to that, and this can be a very, very long discussion, but, I think what Navalny did is based on facts.
Yes.
It's not fiction. It's good storytelling, and that's really great, But we're looking at immediate effects. And what I've seen, over my career as an investigative reporter, is that when you report facts, when you post documents online, when you explain how you did things, the effects are multiple, and they develop over longer periods of time. And very often, we report about oligarchs in Russia or Ukraine and elsewhere, and nothing happens in country. But because the nature of their business is transnational, part of their network collapses somewhere like in New Zealand, and then their business interests are affected in Russia or Ukraine. So very often we're hit with letters or emails from lawyers of these guys telling us, please take our name, off the website, take this name, take this document, because it's hurting our business. If you don't do that, if you don't comply, we'll sue you. Now we have libel insurance, we have lawyers that answer back to these kind of requests, and we never take things down. And we're very happy when we actually get these type of letters, because that means they're affected outside of what the judicial power does or says in that country. Because of course, they are powerless in front of such powerful, oligarchs and dictators and all. It's what's going on right now in Baku, for instance. It's what's going on in many, many places, But actually their business is hurt, and it's hurt badly. So I think facts really matter. I agree, good storytelling is crucially important, but facts matter over a longer period of time, and this is due to the internet as well, because I'm seeing articles that we published 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago that make a difference now because we posted certain documents with them that hurt business interests of the criminal and the corrupt. And that's our interest, to stop the corrupt from doing business as usual. I don't care if the police is starting the investigation or not. What I want is that our articles stop these guys from doing business as usual.
Okay, thank you. We are going to open the floor. Мы сейчас, если у кого-то есть вопросы, пожалуйста, сейчас их время задать. Мы открываем возможность.
It's now time to ask questions. The first row.
For Europe, I would like to know how alternative facts have changed the way your newsrooms operate. The question is about some very basic practices and routines that you as journalists now do due to alternative facts, or if nothing has changed in the newsrooms, why not? Thank you.
Did you get that?
I think, it's about how alternative facts change the newsroom, right?
How do alternative facts change the newsroom? The work of the newsroom,
The work in the newsroom,
Emma? Scott? Have the alternative facts changed the newsroom? Can we take that one?
They haven't in our newsroom. We continue to do what we've always done, and I think we lose sight of the fact that we have, I think, some of the best jobs and some of the most important jobs on the planet. I think that it's really important, the work that we do, and it's not that complicated. You go out and you talk to people, you cultivate sources, you bring people to bars and you give them, you buy them drinks and you establish relationships with people, and you get them to give you documents, and you start to figure things out, and then you report these stories, and you make sure that you have everything nailed down. And so in our newsroom, our things haven't really changed. Our executive editor, Marty Barron, who is probably one of the best editors in the country and maybe in American journalism history, has all told us, and I think this is something that's important for all of us to remember, is just to try to keep your head down and work really hard and try not to worry about what other people are saying or doing, because you have no control over the fake news sites and the Breitbarts and the InfoWars and the RTs of the world. You can't control what they're going to do. You can only control what you can do and what you can do with your reporting and making sure that it is accurate and that and you've got everything nailed down before you go to publication. So things really haven't, I think more than anything in our newsroom, our mission, we all feel, has never been more important. We've hired more people. We feel that the calling of journalism is more important now than it ever has been before. The morale in our newsroom is at an all-time high. We are energetic. We are committed. We want to make sure that that our mission stays true. And you know, you feel like you're in a B-17 bomber flying over, you know, Germany, and you're taking all kinds of flak, but you just got to keep on flying and make sure that you don't let this flak, you know, get you off course.
Sounds like fun. It sounds like if alternative facts did not exist, they would be worth inventing just to save, to make journalism great again.
And I'll just add, you know, that what happened in our case, and it's not necessarily connected to fake news, but it's that we increased our fact-checking, you know, with our centers. So we have many centers for investigative reporting that are members of our organization, and most of them right now have local fact-checkers. And that's really what changed, because what we need to keep is the trust of the public. You're right. I mean, you need to build trust across networks in order to actually be able to operate. And this is, you know, fact-checking contributes to that a lot. And the fact-checkers in our organization are the most hated people until we publish the story, you know. They really are. I mean, it's really bad. I get annoyed at fact-checkers sometimes, and then, of course, I have to apologize quite a bit. So I think that changed a bit, because we need to make fewer mistakes. We still do make mistakes, but fewer and fewer and fewer. Because I think this is the only thing that, you know, that's like a fence between us and Breitbarts and all these InfoWars and all these other, you know, generators of lies.
Okay, we'll take a few more questions. Несколько вопросов сразу к ряду мы зададим.
We'll take a few more questions.
Okay.
Sviatoslav Jurash.
Sviatoslav Jurash.
Ukraine, local producer for Fox News. My question is concerning slow journalism, the idea that is popularized right now in several countries of the West, with publications like Delayed Gratification, where they publish news 3 months after they happened, provide a refined perspective and a much more deeper insight into what actually happened with the storyline. And couldn't the popularization of such phenomenon be a possible antidote to the current journalism that is often absorbing Western media?
The reverb is so bad that we can hear a word.
It's like a huge echo.
And you sound like God's voice.
That is what Fox News very often is.
Do it without you, Mike.
Better.
Okay, thank you. So slow journalism, could that be the answer to alternative facts? Привет, Олег.
Привет. Oleg Sukov from the Kyiv Post. Speaking about philosophy, I would argue that the spread of social media is not a fundamental reason of post-truth. I would say that, for example, Aristotle had a very common sense philosophy, but after Aristotle, there was a decline in philosophy in ancient Greece, and that led to the destruction of the Greek-Roman civilization. And now a similar phenomenon might be taking place because philosophers since Immanuel Kant, for example, doesn't recognize often the notion of objective truth. And modern philosophy, like for example 20th century philosophy, 21st century philosophy, has almost discarded this notion of objective truth completely. So the question is, do you think modern philosophy has something to do with this post-truth world?
I think you'll have to repeat without the mic.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's really not. Without mic.
Без микрофона.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we can't.
Все наоборот, мы с микрофоном ничего не слышим.
The post-truth is related
It's
to the
declining of civilization.
of philosophy. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah.
Wow. That's a hell of a question.
Philosophy.
Молодой человек.
God is dead.
Начинайте без микрофона, молодой человек. You can start without the mic. We can hear better that way.
I will start with the mic.
Especially for Mr. Pomerantsev, because it was his argument about societies that have no purpose. They tend to have more fake news. Well, when you said that, I thought about the Ukrainian-Russian war. And we have a lot of fakes in this context. We have Ukrainian fake news that kind of support the idea of Ukrainian army having success and so on and so on. And then there's a lot of identical fakes in Russia. So it seems to me that the more there is purpose in a society, the easier it is actually to make a fake, to make it catch, you know, because if the fake serves the purpose, if it goes with the purpose, then it catches well.
Every fourth word. Did anyone get that?
No. I think maybe we should ask people to come stand up here.
You can't hear a word here,
Can you
sorry.
move forward and ask a question from here?
Yeah.
Do the email us questions.
Like, it's cool. Yes.
Hashtag fake news.
Yeah. Ну, может, пока ответим на другие вопросы? Или подождем?
Сейчас, 30
Давай,
секунд.
да.
So,
Отсюда спросите.
Maybe I'll start answering other questions.
Yes.
Да, да.
But
You said that it's easier for a society that has no goal, no purpose, to produce and develop fake news. When you said that, I thought about the Russian-Ukrainian war, and I found that we have a lot of fake news. Russia has a lot of fake news related to that, and for example, we have a lot of fake news that we talk about the success of the Ukrainian army, and then Russia has identical news on that side. The
that wasn't what I was talking about, but I'll explain. Okay, that's not what I meant to talk.
So you have to repeat, I think.
Okay, so we have 3 questions. Is the slow journalism the answer to alternative facts? Number 1. Number 2, is proliferation of fake news a result of the end of philosophy and objective reality as such? And the third one is, in a society with a strong sense of purpose, such as during the war, it's easier to manipulate with the help of fake news and alternative facts. Agree, disagree. So take any question you like.
So I'm not a philosopher, so I will start with answering the first question. I strongly believe that slow journalism or long-term journalism really give a sense. I can see it on my work. I'm trying, as I told you, there is about 20 anonymous pro-Russian websites in my country, and I'm trying to find the people who stands behind those websites, and I am trying to learn how those projects are financed, if they are financed from Russia, or if they are partly paid by the guys from the Czech Republic. And I was partly successful because I found some of the guys, some of them are Czech citizens, and it's interesting to talk of them because you see that that some of them are frustrated for what had happened after the Velvet Revolution, because some of them are like coal miners who's in their jobs had some problems with corruption. They told it to their chiefs, but they didn't do anything against it. So their trust into the liberal democracy starts to be smaller and smaller and smaller, and then at the end they start to read those alternative websites. So it's important to do those long-term projects because you can then more better understand why some people are consuming those media, and that's the other part of my answer. I feel, and that's what also changed in my job, I feel it's very important to leave the bubble where I'm living. Well, I'm defending liberal democracy. I strongly believe in that. I'm working in the mainstream media. I have some opinions. But because I'm living in the capital, I'm not rich, but my living conditions are rather good. So sometimes I don't see the situation on the people who are living on the periphery, and those people are rather a lot of consuming those alternative media. So that's what I'm trying to change in my life, to leaving my bubble and to talk more with those people. In a respect, we did something, some special supplement about disinformation. It has got 120 pages, and me or my colleagues are going to countryside, having debates like this with the people who don't agree with us, and we are trying to talk with them. Well, I know that we are not able to persuade all of them, but sometimes the discussion about those things is important because it can be the start point when you can change the thinking of the people.
Okay, so not just slow news, but also making sure you leave the bubble and talk to people on the ground. Yeah, relevance, yeah.
I can address a bit, this idea of the erosion of truth and objective truth, and I'll obviously oversimplify things because this can be a long discussion. But what I'm seeing, if you look at fake news, if you look at post-truth, and at actually what is generating all this, let's say, movement, it's businessmen. It's heads of states that have business. So I think what we have right now, and you're saying that most of these people are against liberals, they are against open society, they are against Soros, they are against, whatever, LGBT and all these other things. And at the same time, these are some of the people that have the most operations across borders, the most business across borders. You look at Trump, he operates in so many countries. He sells his brand across many countries. But these people have a problem right now. I mean, their profit margin are decreasing because the world, goes slowly, towards a world without borders. This is why they don't want international treaties. This is why they don't want, the trading to be streamlined, because the moment you share with many people, in other parts of the world, that moment, your profit decreases. And this is very socialist, let's say, to share the profits and all this. But in fact, borders are good for business right now, for this type of business that is developed now. Because imagine what? If I'm looking at high-level money laundering, what money launderers do is they look at the laws in each country, And in some countries, money laundering means one thing. In the second country means a different thing. And it's not, the same charge. If you look at drug trafficking, it's the same. Now imagine you have the same law across the world, That would be damaging to them. And their profit margins, and their risk of going to jail would increase.
It could actually be beneficial because there's only one scheme to go around the global law.
It's not actually, because in that way it's easier to find their scheme. If you have data that is centralized, if you have like truly a global society and truly global information, and we don't have that right now. We have murky waters, and this is what fake news tries to promote. It promotes again borders. It's a clash with with the idea that let's have a world that is about openness in data, openness in everything, in our freedoms and all that. So I think fake news is part of this backlash against that type of society where everything is in the open and where it's harder to do damaging business and dirty business.
Anyone else?
Well, I love the philosophy question. I think just in part because I think this is an important question to think about. Like, I want to live in a democracy, and in order for a democracy to function well, people need to understand, the problems that they're voting on, how they're electing officials. So I don't know, because I'm not a student of philosophy, so I can't. It sounds like maybe you are, and maybe you have some thoughts. But I do think, in the U.S. it's interesting because the U.S. has a reputation as being a very religious country, and actually since Bush, attendance in churches has been going down, and General Mattis, our defense secretary, was asked what keeps him awake at night, and what he said was that the American society right now, he feels, doesn't have much cohesion, that people don't feel like they have commonalities on any number of things, philosophy, religion, what they like to eat, who knows. So I think it's an important question for all of us to contend with. And on the question of, news churn versus slow news? Being in the churn business myself, we're a 24-hour operation. I love slow news. I've been reporting on one story for a year and a half, and it should publish in December. And so I think you have to have both. But I think that some of the exhaustion right now comes from just the access to sort of, and for in the U.S. right now, it's almost like a never-ending crisis. There's like some new crisis every day. And it can really wear people down. And so what I honestly worry about for American consumers right now is fatigue. I worry about Americans becoming exhausted and disengaging.
Peter, I think it's your turn to answer the question on whether it's easy to manipulate.
The question about war. I was talking about somewhat different, that the society which has no goal exists, and the politicians are not afraid that they are lying. The politicians are enjoying that they are lying publicly. If you are trying to catch up them, and he says, I'm lying to them, I'm pleased about that. With war, it was very interesting. There are always a lot of war propaganda around the war. And there was a moment when Putin could have been caught up. The coffins, first time he said we had no dead people, that's the history. He was trying to convince people an alternative reality. He could be caught up that there were real Russian soldiers. There were investigations about the soldiers from Buryatia in Donetsk. At the moment when he had to achieve something, where the lie was used as an alternative reality, then he could have been caught up, and then it would have been easier for journalists. There was a game between the truth and the lie, but he doesn't care most of the time, and it's difficult to catch up. That's it. We have time for one last question.
Does we have a chance as a journalist to win in the battle between post-truth and truth, between fake and truth? Because we can film a lot of scenarios, we can open a lot of corruption scams, but after all of those, people still continue voting for Yulia Tymoshenko, as example, or Yanukovych, or something like this. Does we have a chance to win in this battle? Peter, please.
Теперь еще раз без микрофона.
Does we have a chance to win in a battle between post-truths and truths, between lies and truths? Because we can open a lot of scenarios about corruption scams and open faces and politicians, but people still continue voting into all of those for you, Tymoshenko.
I didn't get the message. Oh, yeah. So the question was, if we're doing our good work as journalists and we're putting out these stories and exposing corruption, but these corrupt officials still get elected, like, does truth ever stand a chance to win? That's a dark question, but.
Well, you know, the beauty of it is that you have all these people that are backing fake news and fake news websites and all that. But guess what? Those people need to operate in the real world. They can't operate with fictional objects. So in the end, they operate with the truth, because that's in their interest. This is why facts are so important, you know. Once we expose what's beyond their lies, I think they have no choice. Because they can't eat the lies. They can't do business with the lies. They have to do business with the truth, with reality. And, you know, so I think it's not even a matter of winning, you know. I think this is a small screen in the end, you know, that is very easy to pierce through once you understand that you need more facts out there. And this is what we're missing right now, more facts, as I said a few times. And I think it's a mistake, for instance, from the side of the EU to establish these websites to counter post-truths, to counter fake news, to counter all sorts of lies, you know. I think you're just playing the game in that moment, you know. I think you're doing, you know, the opposite of fighting. The only way to fight this is to keep working as you always did and to keep on exposing the truth. That's it, you know, keep on exposing facts. And that's, you know, in my opinion, how this can be won. And it's already won the moment we understand this, I believe.
Previous Czech president, Václav Havel, his most famous sentence was that true and love ever win. And that's what I strongly believe, but you also need to have imagination. And sometimes in some countries, like United States, I had a feeling that most of the people nowadays don't have enough imagination, that lies can win and that the regime can change. We, as people who are living in Central Europe, understand pretty well how the regime can change into a liberal democracy. So I would suggest that you need to have enough imagination to know that these things can happen even in the country with a strong system check and balances. And if you understand this, because you have got many lessons from the past, from the history, you can then better battle with those guys who are spreading those alternative facts, because you have got motivation.
Okay, I think we are running out of time for this panel, and I would like to thank our panelists, Peter, Paul, Ondrej, Scott, and Emma, and rephrase Paul's last phrase to say, stay calm and report facts, and you will fight and you will do well in the post-truth society. And Peter would add some carnival to it as well. Thank you.